at all clear what their strategy is going to be, and I think that's going to really hurt them.
Jeff Koss from Congress Daily Now. Thank you very much for that legislative update. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And joining us to debate these issues are Joseph Romm, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, and Marc Morano, former communications director for the Republicans on the Senate Environmental Committee. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Marc, let me start off with you. There is a lot of debate out there as to whether or not there is should this be a priority, given the fact that we are currently in a recession. There are millions of people out there that are out of work. There are some folks that say, you know what, perhaps maybe this should wait. However, the president says not so fast. This is one of my number one issues behind health care and education. The environment fuels our economy, given the fact that it creates millions of green-collar jobs, according to him. He also says that we cannot wait any longer, because if we do wait, this becomes, thus in the process, a detriment to our economy. Do you agree?
Well, actually, President Obama's actually come out now. They're talking about delaying an international treaty now to 2012 because the U.S. Congress isn't going to support it. He's also talking about delaying cap and trade. We're already hearing it's going into next year. The bottom line is a Gallup poll came out this week showing that global warming doesn't even rank among the top environmental issues by Americans. This is actually being panned out in the scientific community. We have Robert Giegengach, the former chair of the University of Pennsylvania Geology Department, saying global warming isn't even a top 10 environmental problem. And when you combine that with the fact that if you address global warming and the way the Congress is looking to do it, James Lovelock, James Hansen, the two biggest, loudest sirens, of course, next to Joe Romm, of global warming fear, are basically saying this is ineffectual and carbon trading's bordering on a scam, according to James Lovelock. If we face the climate catastrophe they're all talking about, we would all be doomed if we relied on Kyoto 1, Kyoto 2, or congressional cap and trade. So the American people are going to be asked to pay higher for home energy, heating, gas, for absolutely no climate benefit, and at a time when we're having a huge economic recession, and at a time when the scientific community, we had the geologic Congress in Norway last summer, and Sweden, where 2/3 of the scientists were hostile or skeptical to the UN view. We have a Japanese report where 90% rejected the UN IPC scientists. Across the globe, this issue is essentially collapsing scientifically in terms of the fear issue. And again, just to repeat, even if we face the catastrophe that Joe Romm believes and others believe, cap and trade would have no impact on temperature, and it's essentially a big power grab by Washington. By one scientist, Roger Pilkey Jr., calls it cap and charade. And that's what we're facing here.
Joe, your response?
Well,
where do you begin?
Sure, yeah. Marc really represents pretty much of a fringe group. I mean, the Republican candidate for president, John McCain, wants to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 70% or more by mid-century. The electric utility industry statement of principle says global warming is real, we need deep cuts. I don't think there's any question that there is an overwhelming scientific understanding that on our current emissions path, we are going to warm the United States 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century, and sea level rise will be 5 feet or higher, and a third of the planet will be desert. We're already seeing extreme droughts everywhere. So I don't think there's any question about that. That's why, as I said, virtually everybody who has looked at the issue seriously understands that we need to take strong action. Now, I think the point that Obama has made is that the way to do this is with an aggressive approach towards green jobs and putting a price on pollution. The goal is, since every country is going to take action on global warming, the countries that act first are going to be the leaders in creating jobs and exporting technology. And I think that is the goal. And I think it's important to point out that the key strategy here, and Obama has endorsed it in the cap and trade, is that, yes, the cost for dirty energy goes up, but the good news is you take that money and you give it back to the public in the form of a tax cut. So the public is held harmless, and you switch from reducing taxes on labor, and labor is a good thing, and increasing taxes on pollution, and pollution is a bad thing. So I think that, as I said, the electric utility industry, John McCain, the overwhelming majority of scientists who've looked at the issue, they've all come to the same conclusion.
We're at a point now where the New York Times Magazine profiled the eminent physicist Freeman Dyson, and Joe Romm is now attacking a New York Times reporter, Andrew Revkin, for saying Dyson may be right. So it just shows you who's on the fringe here and who isn't, when you have, attacking New York Times as being on the fringe, essentially, now is what we have him believe.
Let's step back for a second, Marc. Go ahead, Marc. Go ahead.
Oh, but the bottom line is, if we face the catastrophe, cap and trade, all it's going to do is increase bureaucracy. There's reports that may actually increase overall emissions emissions, because China and other developing countries aren't going to be in it. There's the moral question of this. Al Gore, Joe Romm will talk about the moral question. We're talking about 1.6 billion people don't have running water and electricity, and we're putting all this global warming, unfounded global warming hysteria. Chad has banned charcoal based on global warming fears. UK grocery stores talking about buying local, which is going to affect poor Kenyan farmers in Africa. Is it right for white, wealthy Westerners to tell poor people of color that you must be afraid of global warming, you must not develop like us, as Thomas Friedman has said, telling India, don't follow us with your cheap car. Don't follow us. That's a white, wealthy Westerner telling people of color not to follow them because they don't want them to have prosperity the same as we do, because we did it wrong.
Let's step back for a second, Mark, and let me ask you this very simple question, yes or no. Do you believe that humans have contributed to the warming of this planet?
Well, there's all kinds of ways, sure, through land use, possibly through CO2, depending on how much. It's all about what it means. Right now, we're finding out in scientific literature, warming may pause for up to 3 decades. New study in research of geophysical letters. And we're finding that high school kids watching Gore's film today may be almost eligible for art membership by the time warming resumes, according to this new peer-reviewed study and these scientists. The CO2 forcing that's promoted by the UN and by Al Gore, by Joe Romm, is completely collapsing on them. The Earth is not warming the way they're saying it is, whether you're talking sea level, you're talking ocean cooling. People say, well, wait 30 years, the warming is going to be explosive. Well, there's no warming in the pipeline. Roger Pilkey Sr. came out recently and just said there is no warming. Look at ocean heat content. It's all a fantasy land. It's a fantasy land that Joe Romm is
your response?
Yeah, I do need to respond to it. The thing you have to understand about Marc Morano is that he basically makes stuff up and misrepresents science.
Wow.
And,
going right for the jugular there.
I didn't interrupt you.
No, you didn't.
I have an email from a scientist who said our conclusions were misinterpreted by Marc Morano. This was a study in which Marc Morano claimed that the sun was responsible, and this study clearly showed that in the last 150 years, it is principally carbon dioxide which is responsible for the warming. Marc Morano cites this study which claims that warming may or may not pause for a decade or two. What he doesn't tell you is that study says even if there's any temporary pause in the warming, we will have even greater warming than scientists have predicted because of these factors. So the thing to understand is that Marc Morano is very good at identifying a few fringe scientists and misinterpreting their work. The reality is that the National Academy of Sciences, the American
governing board members of those groups.
I didn't interrupt you.
Sure.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is not only the 2,000 world leading scientists, but every single member government, which is 170 governments, including the United States and China and Saudi Arabia, sign off on the reports that come out from the IPCC
Sure, it's a political process.
Word for word. That's why it's a least common denominator
It's not
and
a science
underestimates
process.
what's going to happen. No,
You're touting politics as though that's scientific proof. That's kind of embarrassing.
It is a
isn't
scientific process which gets watered down and underestimates what the science actually says.
It's no more a scientific process than a Republican or Democrat Party platform convention is. Each line is approved by member governments. It's called the Intergovernmental Panel. I don't know where you missed that. And as for your allegation of misrepresenting the scientist, I did a public rebuttal to you. I actually responded directly to the scientist. We actually put her words up to the percent of that she said maybe linked to the sun. So your whole thing is completely without any credibility. When you look at the science of this, we have over 700 prominent international scientists coming out. I just mentioned the Geologic Congress survey of Canadian scientists, 67% say the science isn't settled. He just gave you a bunch of governing board members of different science academies beholden to politics who 24 members without direct vote said, oh yeah, we agree with the UN, global warming is a big looming problem. When in reality, it's not even ranking in top 10 environmental issues. It's time for him, when he starts going after the New York Times as being part of the denier crowd, it won't be long before Joe Romm goes after Obama for delaying an international treaty in cap and trade, like he did President Bush. Isn't Obama a denier, Joe? What's going on?
Hold on 1 second, because I'll let you guys, I'm going to go to a commercial break. I'll get you to respond on the back end. Okay. I told you at the beginning of the show that some say yes, some say no about this very heated debate on global warming and, of course, the environment and politics and green politics. But we'll come back in about 3 minutes and we'll continue this conversation right after this.